The Sacraments. From the works of Venerable Louis of Granada, Chapter 49. Effects of Holy Communion. There are two principal effects of the Eucharist. The one, which is common to all the sacraments, is that it gives grace to him who receives it worthily. The other, which is proper to this sacrament, is what theologians call spiritual nourishment. Hence, the Council of Florence declared that all the effects which food causes in the body are caused by this spiritual food in our souls. Physical food restores our exhausted energies and tissue. In the case of young, it increases the body's substance so that children can grow to maturity. When taken by the sick, it not only keeps them alive, but restores their powers which are lost and health. All these effects follow from the Eucharist, for the soul also needs to be restored from time to time. In our soul, there is a kind of heat which theologians called concupiscence. We have inherited it from our first parents as a result of their original sin. This concupiscence inclines us to things of the world and make us cold and indifferent to the things of heaven. And as we yield to the desires of the flesh, we weaken the desires and inclinations of the spirit. The more we incline towards the things below, the more we withdraw from the things above. Added to this, the world itself is filled with vices which are sirens to the flesh. Having so many inclinations and attractions to evil, if we had no one to assist us and inflame our love for the good, where would we end? For that reason, divine providence gave us the Eucharist. My flesh is meat indeed. This sacrament rid our souls of its tendency and gives us the spirit and power to travel the road of God. Whence, one of the principal means to attain true devotion is the frequent reception of the Eucharist. The second property of food is to give delight to him who eats it, and all the more as the food is more savory and the taste is better disposed for food. Divine Providence gave us an appetite for food because it is necessary to eat in order to live, although some eat more for a taste than food for the preservation of life. God made the same provision in regard for the food of the soul. The taste or delight for this food is so great that no one can describe it. For here, one tastes the savor and spiritual delight of its very source, which is God Himself. This delight results both from the dignity of our soul and from the food which is eaten. As the soul is higher beyond compare than the body, its delights will also be greater. The delight will be so great that the soul can exclaim with the psalmist, "My heart and my flesh have rejoiced in the living God." When a soul sees itself so consoled by the Lord and treated with such tenderness, it is inflamed with an intense love for that good and loving God. From this follow the good resolutions and holy desires, which are the flowers that precede the fruit of good works. There is also developed a disdain for the world and a distaste for all the pleasures of the world. As Saint Bernard says, in tasting spiritual sweetness, the spiritual man begins to abhor all the idols he has formerly adored. Then follows the burning desire to please God, who so loves us. And because the soul understands that nothing so pleases God as obedience and observance of His commandments, and nothing is so displeasing to Him as sin, there is an intense effort to obey God's laws and great solitude to avoid not only mortal sin, but even venial sins and the occasions of sin. Therefore, the soul is drawn into solitude and silence, because in this way it preserves recollection and avoids many occasions of sin. Another effect of the spiritual food of the Eucharist is the desire to suffer great hardships and labors, and even to shed one's blood for the love of Christ. The soul now realizes that the summit and proof of true virtue lies in patience amid trials and sufferings, as the Apostle states. This is what pleases Him who suffers so much for us. And because, as it is written in the Canticles, Love is strong as death and conquers all things. There is fostered in the soul a great fortitude. Saint John Chrysostom referred to this when he said that from this bread men become as courageous as lions. The third effect of the Eucharist is to destroy hunger and give satiety. This effect pertains in a special way to the Eucharist, as it is evident in the life of the saints who, after communion, often received such peace of soul and such tranquility of passions that there was nothing for them to desire further. Nor is this anything to be amazed at, for Christ is the spouse of our souls and our ultimate end. And when the soul enjoys His presence, there truly is nothing left to be desired. From this satiety is born a new hunger for the same food. And here we can see the difference which St. Gregory points out between the delights of the body and of the soul. In the former, satisfaction causes boredom. In the latter, it causes hunger, as we read in Wisdom. They that shall eat me shall hunger yet, and they that shall drink me shall yet thirst. From this peace and contentment follows the mortification of the passions, since these come, as St. James says, from the appetites of the flesh. And when these are satisfied, the passions have no reason to be aroused, because the soul is content with what it has. To all these effects, I add the rapture or ecstasy which some of the saints experienced after Holy Communion. When the soul considers, on one hand, its unworthiness and lowliness, and on the other, the dignity and loftiness of the Lord, who infinitely surpasses all created things, who fills the heavens and the earth, whose throne in heaven, and whose footstool the universe, they are so overcome by His divine goodness and so overwhelmed by love that they cannot contain themselves. Sometimes this admiration is so great that it rises to the higher part of the soul and leaves the lower part without any sensation or feeling, as frequently happened to Saint Catherine of Siena. Often she was so rapt and absorbed after communion that she could not even feel the piercing of the flesh with a needle. The same occurred to Saint Francis of Assisi. This proves that the delights of the Eucharist far surpasses any earthly delight. The end.